Hi guys, it's Evelyn from Twin Flames 3344. I got a lot of downloads this morning I want to share with you. Just a couple from the 2 days prior, and then I'll get into this. It was before I even got to my codes, I was getting downloads this morning, so it's a lot. On the 20th, I was getting for the Divine Masculine, nest eggs were coming up. On music, and then on the 21st, so yesterday, in my codes came up FIFO and Divine Justice, which brought up Fee Fi Fo Fum, I Smell the Blood of an Englishman, and then Civ came up. So when I looked up different possibilities for Civ, of course, I have the filter, but also came up SIVE, was an Irish play by John B. Keane, and it was about rural life in the 1950s, where the main character was this person, Civ or Sive, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, and she rarely speaks throughout the play, showing her being used, that her voice is drained by power-hungry society in which she lives. No real escapism amidst the selfishness and greed, that money dominates everything, and that innocent people suffer greatly in a society that is so self-absorbed and dominated by powerful, authoritarian people. So that was yesterday. And also a little bit of Dark Mother was coming up yesterday. A lot of releasing of pain issues and wounds to come up to clear. Healing. Information about the difference in masculine and the feminine. The protection of the masculine due to the feminine vulnerability. They're vulnerable to manipulation due to they're more emotional. But that the Divine Masculine needs to protect not only the body, but the whole package, you know, the heart, the spirit, the soul, not just the body. Okay, so this is very important for the masculine to understand. 1133 keeps coming up every day, which is very spiritual. It's the 11 spiritual, and you're all familiar with 11, and 33 is the Christ vibration. Also, yesterday I was getting, for the Divine Masculine, tooth pain was coming up, and I don't know if this relates to anyone specifically, but tooth number 5 came up for the Divine Masculine, and then twos in the Divine Masculine reads were coming up a lot, like double twos and triple twos within the read. So very significant for the Divine Masculine, the number 2 to the if, and teeth. And it was interesting too because the teeth come up again today in some of my other downloads that I'm going to express in a moment. But it was interesting because the canines come up and the eye teeth, and my 2 eye teeth were protruding when I was little, you know, just a little bit. It wasn't bad, but before I had braces, so nobody would ever know that about my teeth, but they're coming up again. The canines came up in this read, so I'll explain that when I get to that point. So we get to today, which is July 22nd, 2018. It's the 22, which is the Fool in the Divine Triangle numerology book, which I resonate with. So 22 is a master number. It requires twice as much from you, but you get twice as much in return. It's also 4, so it's a number of building and stability and structure. So it seems kind of contrary to the Fool, right? But when you take a leap of faith, you have stability, because you know, we talk about your heart being your home. That becomes your stability. So the Fool is correct, because the Fool is free inside their heart, and they trust, and they have faith. So the day adds up to 40 today, which is the Page of Cups, which is the innocence of love. It's the inner child, the pure inner child, the inner child who wants to love. So that's a very big energy today between the Fool and the Page of Cups. It's very beautiful and loving. And so children could also be coming up, new children as well as just your children in general, other people's children, and your inner child. So very important today to follow your bliss. And life may be showing you that today. So I looked at the clock at 9:09 this morning, and then 10:10 came up as well as 9:44 and 10:17 in my numbers this morning. And it's, like I said, I was putting out cards, and before I even got to my codes in my cards, I started getting the messages. Actually, a past life with my sister came up, which I'd known about already, but that came up. It hasn't come up in a long time, about the Civil War together, and some of her issues, because I was working on her yesterday, some body issues. Because when I do my work, I meditate with the person, and I can actually see what their issues are inside of their body. So we were trying to connect some of the issues to where they're actually coming from, because many times it's not actually the place you're feeling it, it's the source of the issue is somewhere else. And that's why it's important to learn energetic lines within the body, which I'm still working on that stuff. My memory's not very good anymore, so it's hard for me to do schooling, because I'll remember things but then I'll forget them, in an hour. So I was hit by a car a couple years ago, so my short-term memory isn't very good anymore. So that came up. So some past life stuff may be coming up to clear. It was actually showing me one of her issues and one of my issues, both from injuries from that Civil War period where we were together as nurses. And nurses were kind of looked down upon at that time. They weren't revered like they are today. So see what comes up for you. Karma, when karma came up, or the Judgment card, my nose started running. So if that brings anything up for you, let me know. And then a big thing came up. It was a combination of cards that were bringing together a picture, but in multiple ways. And it had to do with religious leaders, and specifically the Pope was coming up. And I have nothing against the Pope, so this is just the messages I was receiving, okay? So just take it for what it is. If you resonate with it, great, and if you don't, you don't. Let it go. I was getting that the downloads, paved with gold, will the real Pope please stand up? That the Pope is showered with gold, that the heat is on for justice. And in this picture that I was seeing, the Hierophant, in this deck, the Hierophant holds two fingers up with their right hand, and then with the left hand, it's like they're holding a psychic antenna in the left hand. And also the pictures I kept seeing, I was being shown that all of these pillars in these pictures were the same as the High Priestess, except hers were blatantly black and white, whereas all of these pillars were gray. Okay, so in the Hierophant and also the Justice card, in the this was the Rider-Waite mini, all of the pillars, there's pillars there just like the High Priestess, but they're all gray. And they're like, they were being referenced to the towers as well, the two towers in the Tower card, or in the Moon card as well. So I was getting facing the music regarding XY chromosomes. And I was being shown in these cards as well the X's and Y's again, which I brought up yesterday. Also, the colors were being revealed to me in some kind of coding. So what comes up, is that anything comes up for you and what I'm saying, please comment below. It's important. We're expanding each other's downloads and knowledge through these codes. That's why we receive them, in order to share them. So I was seeing 5 X's and then 3 not aligned. There's 1 X on one side and 2 X's below the other side of the 5 X's, and then 2 Y's on either side, clearly showing that the Y goes off the page, right? It's open-ended. It's not fixed like the X. Like the X in the feminine is 0 point, and the Y is the expansion energy or the unstable energy. Okay. So I was also seeing keys to the finish line. I was getting information, and it doesn't have to be the Pope. It could be a religious leader, or it could just be the what's the word I'm looking for? Just the the man in general, and that's not the word I was looking for, but my brain doesn't always work. So I'm getting that the Pope goes to court. That there's some kind of court issue. It could just be a general religious issue that comes up. I don't know if it's just Catholicism, but for me, the Pope was specifically coming up. I was being shown bald heads and literally, what a Pope looks like. I was showing the Y chromosome and its relationship to baldness. And also the blue in the sword of truth, the sky blue, whereas all the other colors in these cards were yellows and reds and whites. The judge holds the truth of the cross in the right hand and scales balanced in the left. The Pope had white shoes with crosses on them. And I was showing that the yellow and red, and these are all of the lower chakras, right, that we're phasing out, the yellow and the red and the orange, that the wolves come out under the eclipse reflected in yellow, and it was showing the really nasty ones are coming out under the yellow color, some orange, which were more innocent actually, and then they were showing me the lobster is red, but it was connected to the cloaking of the Hierophant and the judge. So the yellow path was also being emphasized as being a long and winding road. The keys were also yellow or gold, and the lobster was in the water, as opposed to all of these other people where they were all grounded, whereas the lobster was in the water, in the sea of emotions. Okay. I was shown men losing their hair, or the Y chromosome, was because they were wearing these yellow or gold crowns on their heads. That this was blocking, it was supposed to be there for protection of the crown, right, of your etheric crown, or your crown chakra, but it's actually was being shown to me that it's protecting their crown, but it's also blocking their connection, their true connection. I was seeing the Pope wearing a white Y chromosome on his robe, showing his polarity. Okay. And their bodies were all covered in red, seeing their bodies protected by red, but their crowns being protected by the yellow or gold. And then I got Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, and Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men would have to put Humpty together again. So if anything's coming up for you as far as this, I don't know anything that's going on in the news. I don't watch TV at all. And I have no religious upbringing, so I'm very clear as far as this. I have no impressions as far as religion goes. Their pillars were all gray, like I said, like the towers, whereas the High Priestess was very clear in her knowing, because she's very open. Her pillars were very black and white. There's no gray area. The Y is divided and chooses a path, whereas the X is 0 point. So the feminine energy being 0 point, the Y, or the masculine energy, is the expansion, okay, or the change point. The hair dyes. They were showing me the baldness on the head. That life dies at this from not using the crown chakra. The gold protects their crown, but also blocks the crown. the cold logic and reason was being shown with the gold and the red, whereas the blue is being shown related to emotions, and red specifically to armor. That we're getting away from all this stuff. So the traditional templates. When the moon, or the divine feminine, blocks the sun, the divine masculine, the wolves come out. This is what I was being shown, and the wolves were in this yellow color. So red to gold are the establishment or the old, and that's the word I was looking for, establishment. And then green through violet are the new, the more etheric colors. And if you think about it, the Christ light in the etheric realm is gold. When we meditate, we see it as gold. But the opposite, so you don't look for gold in the 3D, you look for purple, because the opposite of gold is purple. So that would make sense, because we always see that deep purple as royal, don't we, in this realm, as opposed to these reds and golds that we're seeing. So so we're seeing, and it's not that those colors are bad, and you know, gold is good. If you see that the opposite of yellow in the 3D is going to be purple in the etheric, which is the third eye and the crown chakras. But you get my point. So the Y is being, as opposed to the X, which is nothing new, is being shown as the weaker chromosome. Because X obviously is very stable and strong, and the Y is very easily tipped over because it's divided, right? So it's bringing up the weakness in the divine masculine, which isn't we're not talking about the men and the women. We're talking about the divine masculine and feminine within each of us. So it's not just about the men. It's about the divine masculine in each of us. So divine masculine is coming up as weak, and the divine feminine as strong in each of us. And not to feed into fear. So then I get into my coding. And as soon as I read my coding, I get aperture. So I look up aperture. The fundamental aspect of exposure, which is most important of the three aspects. This is in you know, taking pictures, the ISO and the shutter speed are the other two of the three, saying that the aperture is the most important of the three. In order to get a good picture, you can add dimension by blurring the background. So here, you know, we're getting all this terminology right away from our journey. Exposure and dimension. So by and also the aperture is the pupil, which I'm showing you on here in the eye. And this is the eye of Horus in the picture you see here. So the aperture is how much the pupil is opened or closed, right? So the more light you have, the more open the pupil or the aperture is. And then the depth of field comes in because that's the focus, or the iris. The iris is like the lens, you know, opening and closing around the iris. Okay, it's like controlling, blurring the background or making everything clear by a very small opening and very focused field. Or the very focused, actually the more light that comes in, the more blurry it becomes. Or the more, I'm sorry, that's not correct. It's just the more open it is, you know, the more light is allowed to come in. And you know the light is good. So when you have darkness, you need that light because you can't see in the dark. So you won't get a picture, right? So the depth of field comes up because that's, in addition to the light coming in, what is the focus that you want? Do you want a very strong, concentrated focus, or do you want clarity of the whole picture? So sometimes we don't need clarity of the whole picture. That's better to have a focus and then blur the rest, so you can become just more clear because you have such strong focus on one area. And learning to use that focus to your advantage in the way you think. So we're just using this as a comparison to what we're going through. But this is just all from Aperture and looking up the definition. It brings up all of these parallels to the journey and what we're supposed to understand. And it's funny because some of the pictures that came up in this, and this happened to be photographylife.com, that the aperture is the hole in the lens, or the pupil, and it is called the pupil. It shrinks and expands for more light. In dark environment, you want as much light as possible. And then it goes into the depth of field and the blur in the background, or a thin and shallow field. And one of the pictures they used was 721 Cougar Drive, so it was kind of funny. And also explaining about small numbers are confusing in this because they're actually large apertures. So where you're used to seeing like the larger number would be the larger aperture, it's the opposite because it's used in decimals. So it's also relaying to the journey that small numbers are large apertures. So there's lots of light in small numbers. Okay? So it doesn't, just because there's a lot of numbers doesn't mean it's good. Also, Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O came up, as well as Nini. S9 came up in my coding, so I looked it up. And what came up from that was infinity, and it was actually the Samsung phone, the S9. It came up with the infinity display, clear surround sound with dual aperture camera. Okay, so aperture here came up again and had nothing to do with what I was searching. So when I searched aperture, that was separate from S9, and S9 was coming up with aperture again, dual aperture camera. Also said shared data. It's called the galaxy, and if you break down galaxy, it's gala XY chromosomes. Okay, so a gala, a formal event of the masculine and feminine coming together. The S9, S8, and S8 Plus were described as, and also the Galaxy Note 8. Okay, we were just talking about music and notes yesterday. And of course 8 is the infinity and 0 point. So then I looked up 98 EE because that was also in my coding. So what came up was EE98, which was an intro to circuit analysis, which I didn't go into because I'm sure that's very detailed right now, but it also said that there's a high failure rate of this class, intro to circuit analysis. But it sounds like it's important for us to understand. Also came up EE lathe, which was interesting because I know nothing about lathes, but my father had one, which I had to move at one point, so it's the only reason I know what it is. EE lathe 98 millimeter, 3 7/8 inch. So if that's important for someone, let me know. It was definitely coming up, and it related to me and my father. So I also came up with 98 EE was a bond series from December 2009. If that means something to someone, a bond series from 12/2009. Also, the company that came up for EE was Everything Everywhere, and it's a British internet service that merged with T-Mobile and Orange, and their 3G network reached 90% of their population. So it was showing me, but then it was showing 4G 80% and 2G 99%, which was showing me the 2D, 3D, and 4D. It was saying the 2D is reaching 99% of the population. The 3D was reaching 98% of the population, but the 4D was still only reaching 80% of the population. Okay. Also, discipline was coming up. Disciplined exposure. Six keys. And then that's when the K9 came up. I was getting keys of a God divided, which had to do with the 98 EE. But then I looked up the ACI9, which was in my coding. And what came up in the search engine was canine, which the definition for is a conical pointed tooth, like, or, you know, describing attributes of a dog, like loyalty. Okay, so that's when my 2 eye teeth came up, because they were, you know, protruding a little bit when I was young, and that's why I had braces. But also accentuating loyalty. Love sees keys of cyclones, or those cones, the pointed tooth of loyalty. So whether this brings up dogs or just loyalty in general, the attributes of the twins. But this was coming up very specifically. The keys of love sees keys in cones or cyclones. So that's, you know, the coming into the eye of the storm. And realizing that there's the loyalty for me was coming up from the divine masculine, the loyalty of the dog, okay? And also the eye teeth are going to come up for a dog as well, okay? So, and just having people, and also some with their fangs out. So those that I was describing earlier as coming out when the moon was blocking the sun. So you may be seeing some people's fangs come out. I was getting not seeing eye to eye at work. With, it could be just coming together at work with people, but also could be with a third party, not seeing eye to eye, but receiving clarity of who the divine feminine is, that her peace within. And justice served is coming up, and that justice card is Libra energy. So this is coming out very passionately at these eclipses, okay? So we passed through one, but there's 2 more to go. So there's a lot of justice that's going to be coming out here. Regarding family happiness, even when the sun is blocked. So it's like the divine masculine seeing the divine feminine's example of finding happiness even when her sun is blocked. The sun and the moon are coming up as one. This is also coming out as the heat is on. And so, like I said, the Pope and or a religious leader or court, there is justice. Also, divorce is finalized, or a contract marriage comes to light. Justice for the divine feminine as the Queen of Pentacles. And it doesn't mean she's an earth sign. I'm not calling out signs for this. I'm just telling you the energy of the divine feminine is very grounded and stable right now. Justice for the Queen of Pentacles, family who seek peace. Also, trust and faith is coming up as the guidance for you. And that there's protection issues of protecting self, of people being fake and pretending to protect others is exposed as heartstrings are tugged. Okay, so the divine masculine may be confessing unable to look the divine feminine in the eyes because of what they've both been through or not said, that kind of thing. Healing is coming up, is very important. The devil's horns of a weak Leo and child is shown mercy by the Empress. So it's an older woman. It could be a mother, but it could also be a divine feminine. It also could be the that the Empress is an older woman or another woman or a motherly woman who's showing mercy to a divine feminine who's a Leo with a child. Recently, news or message of the wounded warrior or the Knight of Wands, the divine masculine, offering settlement to a Leo. I was getting for the divine feminine, opening your lotus more in your crown, which is coming up multiple times in these codes this morning. You are now able to express your work more fully as we are receiving more opening going forward and this is around family happiness and trust and faith and finding security within peace. Centrally, the masculine and his feminine is coming up, or a feminine. I wasn't getting this as the divine feminine, but maybe a karmic feminine who's in her who's very masculine oriented. She's just normally very masculine, is controlling and needing to give self-love. So this is either the masculine in his feminine or a karmic feminine who's very masculine. They're being very controlling and needing to give themselves love. So the Y is more pronounced than the X in this energy right here. And this is coming up as very central today. Obsessing about the way the divine feminine, obsessing about the way the divine masculine will see her imperfect body in union, challenged by double destiny, moving to their next step in work, very patiently now, with romance, with the Hermit or a Virgo energy offering new life to his son, not S-O-N, but S-U-N. Unable to look up. So this is the divine masculine. There's definitely some divine masculines coming to their divine feminines, but not able to really look them in the eye because they feel bad, guilty, or shame. And this is all templates. But it's hard for the divine masculine because he understands the light of his divine feminine now. So now Trinity is coming up, a lot to be explained, the cross to bear, rising above the truth and starting over after impatience and love, with unconditional love, where there still needs to be a release of some of the emotions, of not being enough for the divine feminine. So the divine masculine not feeling like they're enough. The King of Pentacles, and that could be the divine feminine or the divine masculine. It could be the divine feminine in her masculine, wiping their hands of any cheating that's going on, or of promiscuous children. Could be a cheating wife also, who has kept the divine masculine quiet, or it could be vice versa, where the divine masculine was cheating and the karmic was keeping, he was keeping the karmic quiet. So he wasn't able to offer anything to new, either way, there was some kind of manipulation or threats so that they couldn't offer new love to the divine feminine, who was being seen as working with light and alone and not in a sex life. Okay, so soon the rays are shining upon the divine masculine. So these downloads are coming in to wake the masculine more fully to his sun, to his light, to his divine feminine, the staff he already holds, the love he has already won in the 5D fantasy. They're also awakening to a Leo's childish ways. So this could be a karmic energy, but it could also be a child. The divine feminine is feeling in control. But still, it's like the Queen of Pentacles, the divine feminine still would be in their King of Pentacles as their divine masculine, seeing the passion of her new love, her divine masculine. Could also be the divine masculine in his King of Pentacles, vice versa, seeing his divine feminine, the passion of his divine feminine, new love. The romance angels cards that were coming up today were honeymoon and engagement, getting to know each other. And around this, there's a lot of masculine energy coming up. So around all of this masculine energy and beyond the exposure of heartstrings being pulled and self-protection, or having professed to protect somebody else, but maybe not really protecting them for the right reasons, probably protecting themselves really, but trying to come off as being the great person for protecting the other person. The Page of Pentacles energy is coming up as either the divine masculine or a child showing psychic abilities and then performing for others, or seeing a lot of synchronicities coming in everywhere as the divine masculine energy is now staying present. Clearing blocks from actually the number 28, which is the Two of Wands. Offering love to himself to improve his abilities. So the blocks are being cleared from 28, which is the Two of Wands, which is from a partnership, okay? It's about choosing a new path. The twin showing him the gold blocking of his crown, as in the gossip and overindulgence is blocking his truth. That the devil is all around him. The devil and mini-me, or his minions. Self-discipline, nature, and spirituality are coming up very strongly. The High Priestess holds the keys to the magician embodiment and the Divine Masculine's truth. His 5D love was broken by the devil inside of him and his logical side as the King of Swords. His world gets turned around. Actually, both of them, for the Divine Masculine and Divine Feminine, their worlds got turned around when they weren't able to fight their own demons of separation from higher self, or crown connection, so the crown is blocked. So the Divine Masculine's left hand was being held down by manipulation of emotions to ensure his stardom. His arrogance blocked the King of Wands reversed and the Queen of Pentacles reversed from transforming. In other words, his anger and exhaustion, her lack of grounding and worth. So the Divine Masculine was manipulating emotions to get money or energy, and the Divine Feminine was manipulating money and energy to get emotions out of the masculine. Okay. So these are the messages I got. Please add to the comments to expand these messages. It's very important. Thank you all for listening, and I always appreciate your likes, shares, subscribes, and comments. But more important is that you share these codes and epiphanies. The more people they get out to, the more the other people awaken to their own codes and their own messages. So it's very important. Let me know what you think or feel. The sun is out today. And like I said, it's the Page of Cups. So get in touch with your inner child, the loving inner child that's very pure and sweet and innocent. And who is that? Make a list of things that you loved as a child. What you thought was foolish when you were younger, that wasn't. That was actually your authentic self. Okay? I'll check in later if I have something more to add. Rise and be loved, guys. Have a great week.